Lots of people under evacuation orders to
Why? Nobody has answered for that.
Imagine that is now taken away from you.
These are the faces of some of the biggest news stories in America.
We want justice!
Where's the compassion?
They need to think about what happened.
George Floyd!
Faces that over time faded from the headlines as attention turned elsewhere. Now we're putting the spotlight back on them.
Picking up the pieces and going forward.
Each week, we're traveling to places home to major news stories you may remember.
Everything you work for, just all gone.
And introducing you to people who say it's important you get the full story.
When you have an understanding with a community, people come together.
We're here to support them in this crisis time.
Because we often don't fully learn the impact of an event.
It hurts that people don't realize survivors exist.
Until we look at it in hindsight.
What's the name of this club that's on fire?
It's called The Station.
The Station?
Yep, The Station. It's a concert venue on Queeset Avenue.
How many people are we talking about?
Probably, I don't know, a lot, like 300, 400 people.
300, 400 people?
Something like that.
We are fully engulfed building. We have people on fire inside. Fire apparatus is out, Steve. Multiple people trapped. We just drag them out one by one.
We have all units responding.
More Advise them that we have a mass casualty incident here. They're going to have to institute some kind of a plan to get down here.
Thank you so much for meeting with us, and I know it's not easy to tell this story, and I know you do it a lot, but
I do,
it's not,
and it's important.
It's not easy.
I do it because it's important, because they can never be forgotten. They just cannot.
They are 100 people who lost their lives here. A fire at a rock show by the 80s hair metal band Great White. A fire caused by unlicensed pyro and fueled by flammable foam on the walls. The overcrowded Station Nightclub became an inferno in 90 seconds. Exits were blocked by people trying to escape, preventing many others from making it to safety.
No one showed up that night thinking something was going to happen, but it does.
Gina Russo is one of the survivors.
I have third and fourth degree burn injuries. Spent 11 weeks in a medically induced coma, 4.5 months in a hospital. When I woke up at 11 weeks, it's like the 12th week, they told me that my fiancé that I was with the night of the fire passed. He never made it out of the building. I think it was worse than the injuries. Like, I was like, okay, well, whatever, I'll deal with the injuries, but that to me was the worst thing in the world. I didn't get to say goodbye, and he was such a strong man. Larger than life, it's just crazy, you know? I can still see it. Every day, if I think about it, I see it. I see that stage. I see Fred and I trying to get out. Just total chaos. But my memory stops of the inside from when I got to the main door. When the bouncer wouldn't let us out at fire exit, Fred and I tried to make our way to the front door, the only other door we knew of. I just remember looking back. Fred had pushed me, and I remember hearing him scream, "Go." And when I turned around to try to find him, people were just running for the door. People were on fire. And I made it to the front door, but bodies had already started to pile up in the doorway. My breaths were getting shorter. And I just remember thinking, this is it. Like, this is where I'm gonna die. And I just remember saying to God, please let my kids have a good life and let them forgive me for dying in this place. The doctors and the nurses, you know, they worked really hard to save my life. At times they didn't think it was going to be saved, but they were optimistic and they kept going, and I'm very fortunate. And I would not be alive if it wasn't for them. I really wouldn't. They used an experimental machine on my lungs. As bad as my burns were, the lungs were even worse and organs were shutting down, and this experimental machine saved my life.
Good, right there, perfect. Does it look good to you? Great. How common is it that a band would use the type of pyrotechnics today that the band did at the station fire back in 2003?
Among first-tier bands, if you go to a stadium concert where Kiss is performing, you're going to see plenty of pyro, and it's great. It adds to the show. It's been cleared with the local fire marshal. They've gotten a permit. That permit requires people in the wings with fire extinguishers. It requires that they run their whole show plot to get the permit, so it's run right.
And that night at the station fire, those parameters you're talking about for a big name show that would have pyrotechnics, that was not there.
Oh, absolutely not.
John Barelick practiced law for decades in the state of Rhode Island. He was a lead attorney for several wrongful death and personal injury cases connected to the station fire. In 2012, he wrote a book about that night and what went wrong.
I think it was immediately apparent after the fire that it was the result of many, many missteps. It was hard to deny that you saw it on film. The pyrotechnics lit the foam immediately caught the building on fire, and from there it was a very short time that people had to escape.
It's never been definitively proven whether Great White and lead singer Jack Russell had permission from club owners Michael and Jeffrey Derderian for the pyro they used on stage that night. However, it is clear from grand jury documents that tour manager Dan Beakley, who rigged the pyro display using a wooden board and broom clips, never got permission from local or state fire marshals.
There's so many like, why? Everybody says he said, she said. That's what I think hurts the most, is that no one really will ever say, we just screwed up. And that's all they have to say. You don't want to take full blame for it, that's cool. But say you screwed up.
Jack Russell never faced criminal charges. His band settled with victims for $1 million. The Derderian brothers both pleaded no contest to 100 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Michael spent 27 months in prison. Jeffrey received community service.
I don't think any legalistic explanation of why sentences were the length they were or why people were or were not indicted can ever give comfort to grieving families. And I don't think it did here.
One person did plead guilty to manslaughter charges for their role in the fire. Dan Beakley, the tour manager who rigged the pyro. He was paroled after 16 months in prison. Before his sentencing, Beakley handwrote letters to the families of all 100 people who lost their lives.
Dan Beakley, the road manager, was perhaps the most sympathetic figure among the defendants. He immediately took responsibility for the tragedy, even though it wasn't his decision to use illegal pyrotechnics. He was just the man who physically hooked them up. But Dan Beakley graciously and responsibly wrote to every family, took responsibility, and quietly served his sentence.
I will never forget that night, and I will never forget the people that were hurt by it. I'm so sorry.
May I be seated? The testing outfit said, you know, we've been testing substances for like 30 years, and of all the stuff people have been dumb enough to line rooms with, this was the most violently flammable substance that you could ever consider putting in there. That's just 23 seconds in. And it was threatening to overwhelm the hood and the equipment. There, that's a normal sheetrock 10 by 10 room lined with the polyethylene and the polyurethane foam. I show this to people who say, oh, I would have gotten out of there. And
it's only 45 seconds. And
yeah, it's very sobering.
Grand jury testimony in the aftermath of the Station Nightclub fire would show that Michael and Jeffrey Derderian lined the club's walls with more than 900 square feet of polyurethane foam. It was meant for soundproofing. It was also flammable. Some of it was installed directly on top of polyethylene foam, creating a potent mix. But records show that the foam was not flagged during inspections in 2000, 2001, or 2002.
What we came to learn was that if you shoot sparks from pyrotechnics at this type of foam, the polyurethane, it will ignite, but it will use up most of its energy in about a minute. If you shoot those sparks against the polyethylene, it will not ignite. But if you glue one to the other, one is the perfect kindling for the second. And once the second gets involved, there is no putting it out. It is really generic, cheap packing foam that the Derderians put up on the walls.
Which was illegal.
Yes.
Fire codes vary from state to state. In 2003 and still today, Rhode Island code requires any decorative or acoustic material on nightclub walls to be flame resistant. West Warwick's fire inspector at the time, Dennis LaRoque, would eventually testify that he did not see the polyurethane foam on the walls when he visited the Station Nightclub.
It was possible, I can't speak for the inspector, but if you're doing an inspection, you might not have an understanding of the dangers of that foam.
Donald Bliss, the president of the National Association of State Fire Marshals at the time of the Station Nightclub fire, told us lessons from that night have been incorporated into trainings today.
And to make sure that if you see something like that, you get some type of certificate of compliance to show that this was truly fire retardant acoustic foam versus ordinary insulation foam that may not be fire retardant.
You can see the fire starting on the foam there. Cameraman says, something wrong, I'm going to get out of Dodge. Band does not know what's going on.
One of the things that has come out of this fire is greater attention to the training and certification of fire inspectors and fire marshals.
Bliss told us there are tougher rules surrounding pyrotechnics today and more emphasis on crowd management, especially in larger venues. But he also said the lack of a standard nationwide fire code can leave some communities vulnerable.
There's still the possibility that in a smaller venue, in a jurisdiction that does not do strict enforcement, that there may be times when an unlicensed or unqualified individual is using pyrotechnics for a musical performance or theatrical performance.
What were some of the laws that changed because of what happened here?
Sure, so really the biggest one in Rhode Island, and maybe other states have it, it was called the grandfather clause. Buildings over a certain age did not have to have sprinklers, and this was one of them.
In terms of whether the sprinklers would have saved lives in this situation, undoubtedly. There were tests done by the National Institute of Standards and Technology after this fire to recreate that scenario, And they showed that the fire sprinklers would have kept the fire in check long enough for folks to evacuate.
There would have been some injuries, and it was small, and it was so overcrowded. It was body to body. And then when people are in that fight or flight mode, it's just chaos. It was total. It looked like a stampede. It looked like something you'd see on National Geographic. That's what I see rushing towards that door.
Rhode Island's current formula for venue capacity mandates 7 square feet of space for every 1 person on a dance floor. But records show the Station Nightclubs had permits for 1 person every 5 square feet, 404 people total. On the night of the fire, it was even more crowded. 462 people packed the club, according to post-fire analysis.
And that's the density it would have been with 404. But it wouldn't have looked like that at the concert because there are no sight lines from back here. Really, it would have looked like that.
Wow.
And you can imagine if you found yourself in the middle of that crowd and wanted to get out, you're at the mercy of everyone on either side of you.
Are there still concerns you have today about what started the station fire that might still exist in other places?
Of course. It's not limited to setting off fireworks indoors. Many a time I will walk into a venue now and look for the exits and turn around and leave. I think consciousness of the Station Nightclub fire has changed behaviors, both among club owners and performing acts, as well as concert goers.
I look to see, is there a sprinkler system and where's the second way out? And that's a challenge because in the nightclub fire, Station Nightclub fire, everybody tended to migrate toward the exit that they came in through. And that's just human nature. Pay attention to where those secondary exits are.
The first time I ever saw pyro again in a building was at PPAC, Providence Performing Arts. And we were told that they were not doing pyro. And the second half of the show, the pyro went up. Oh my God, it was a nightmare. And I was with 4 of the survivors. And we were ready to bolt out of the building. And again, someone saw us and like, there's a big water tank hanging over the stage. It's safe, it's safe. But it's a fair. And if I'm not comfortable in a place, the first thing I do is look for the exits and look for fire sprinklers. And nothing's worth it to me anymore. I don't care how good the food is, or it doesn't matter to me. It's not safe, I'm out. Have you ever visited?
I'm trying to remember when I was, because I remember when it happened. I would have been probably in...
Young?
When you take it in, what do you see when you come here?
I see music. So our monuments are speaker boxes, shaped like speaker boxes. But when you come through this gate, it's actually a guitar.
Oh, wow.
It kind of flares out, like if you could see it from an aerial view, it kind of flares out like a guitar would. That walkway a lot of it's dedicated to the churches that were involved. And then the families all bought bricks throughout that walkway over there. But this is Fred's monument. Such a great guy.
How'd you meet?
On a dating website. I was at work one day and a friend said, that's enough, you've been divorced for a long time now, time to meet someone. And she helped me put a profile together. I'm not a techie person, so she helped. And I went on a couple of really bad dates and was going to go and take it off, the profile off there. And I saw him on there with his 2 kids and I'm like, well, he looks interesting. So we started chit-chatting and within like 4 days, I think we met.
You were really ahead of the curve with the online dating.
Yeah. It was called Hip Dates. I don't think it's around anymore. I did meet someone 16 years ago, and we've been married actually 15 years. And I believe that Fred helped me pick him because I used to dream about him all the time. I would go out and someone would talk to me and Fred would be like, nope, not that person. I will let you know when. Never dreamt of him again.
How do you...
Yeah.
It's a nice truck, though. I was like, oh, that sounds great.
It's like my son's former truck, actually. You know, you look at yourself every day. I look like this, but it's not really what I look like. I have 3rd and 4th degree burns over 40% of my body. I wear a wig. My head was badly burned. It took a long time for me to get comfortable with this is the new me. And I certainly was not I was a homebody kind of person. I wasn't a vain person, but I was still a woman, and I loved my hair, and I loved, you know, so all of this stuff was different. It took a long time, and still some days it's hard, but then I have to say to myself, I survived. I mean, injuries aside, my life is blessed. I will take my injuries. I'm still here. I got to watch my children grow up. I'm a grandmother. Like, you know, who gets that? These 100 didn't get that. So I have to live well.
When you come here, I mean, to know what happened here and what you experienced here, how do you navigate the emotions of being in this place?
You know, I find, so before it became this, I don't know if you've ever looked up any pictures, it was tragic looking. These 100 crosses, they were made out of pieces of the building. It was just tragic looking. And it made me sick to come, sick. I did, but it would make me sick emotionally knowing that this is where Fred died, and it was hard. And then when we slowly started to see this come to life, and when it was done, you could feel the peace. You could literally feel it. And people that come to visit now that have no connection, come if they're having a bad day just to sit here and just get themselves together, like they feel it. It's just a very strange thing that happened. It transferred from this tragic to this really peaceful place.